This is Gemara Nedarim Daf Ayin Vav. All the learning for the month of Teves has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf as Chosi L'Neshama, Faryalei Ben Yaakov, Visyat Shemaya. The learning the entire Chabura should bring Aryalei Ben Yaakov to an higher place in Gan Eden Shel Maila. So we're holding on the bottom of Ayin Ham Beis. We're in the middle of discussing we're all discussing the conversation that happened in the Mishnah on Ayin Hayam and Aleph between Rav Eliezer and the Chachamim. And the basic question is, if one is able, according to Rav Eliezer, that he says that one is able to annul future vows before they come into effect, is the pshat that they become to take effect for a moment and then they cease to exist? Or are they blocked from ever taking effect? Again, let's just for one moment scroll back up to the Mishnah when someone said to his wife, Kol Nedarim, Shazdir Mikana Shavalama Komplaini Harein Kayamim. So the Tanakama held Loyamar Klum, but if he said Mufarin, Rav Eliezer says it works, and the Chachamim say it does not work. This conversation, Rav Eliezer and the Chachamim, is the discussion that we're in the middle of discussing. The Rav Eliezer holds that one is able to annul vows that are going to happen in the future. Now the Kal V'chomer, the Rav Eliezer said in the Mishnah, is very important. Let's read it one more time. Again, we're just looking back at the Mishnah right now on Ayin Hey Amid Aleph. Amar Rav Eliezer, Hafer Nedarim Shaba'u Lechlal Iser. If once a neder is chal, I'm able to annul it. I'm able to take it away. Lo yafer nedarim shalei ba'u l'chlal iser. Would I not be able to block future nedarim? And the Chachamim responded, Ishi kimenav ishi firenu. The shayla of the Gemara was, according to Rav Elazar, are they chal and then batal, or do we say that they're not chal at all? And from that point, we pick it back up in our Gemara, Tashema, 6 lines from the bottom, Amru Loi Rav Elazar. So today we're going to begin with a few braisas, which are going to be conversations between the Chachamim and Rav Elazar in unrelated areas, but based on the conversation, we're going to be able to figure out what is the shita of the Chachamim, what is the shita of Rav Eliezer. So Amr Loi the Rav Eliezer, Uma mikvah shemales hatmeim. A mikvah does what? Takes someone who's tamei and makes him tar meitumasam. Yet ein matzal al tayrin. A mikvah doesn't prevent tama. Meaning, if someone is in the mikvah and he touches the sharets, of course he's tamei. So even though a mikvah has the ability to take someone out of his state of tama, we still see it cannot block tama in matzal al tayrin. Milatamei me'letamei. So Adam, a person, she'ein ma'ala esatamim, a person who does not have such an ability. If a person, for example, swallows something that's tamei and then dispels of that item, it's still tamei. So a person does not have the same power as a mikvah made to masam. Einoi din, is it not the din? Is it not a kal v'chomer who shlo yatel ala tahirim milatamei, that a person should not be able to shield something tar from becoming tamei? Meaning, let's say a person swallows something that is tar and he enters into an area that is tamei. He should not be able to prevent the ring from becoming tamei, because we just showed that a mikvah, which does change a status, does not prevent. Certainly a person which does not change a status should not prevent. So therefore, the Chachamim argue in Rav Elazar that it's not true, because in this case of mikvah, the Ran elaborates, that's not actually the halacha. The halacha in the case of mikvah is that, that in the case of mikvah, one more time, let's speak this out. What's the halacha? So what's the Chachamim saying to Rav Eliezer? So we see that the logic of such a kal v'chomer, that even something that could block doesn't necessarily mean that it could change the status. Again, what was the whole premise of Rabbi Eliezer's Kal V'Chomer? Something that has the power to stop something certainly has the power to prevent it from coming to being. But we see from the case of mikvah, not that way say the Chachamim. We see that in the case of a mikvah, the two are not necessarily related. So asks the Chachamim to Rabbi Eliezer that we see not like Rabbi Eliezer, but from this case the Gemara proves Shema Mina Lo Yichalin. What do we see for this case? We see that it must be that it's never chal. What was the original shayla that we're trying to figure out? That according to Rabbi Eliezer is the fact that it's chal, and that he's made for the neder, which would translate in this case that it would become tamei, then it would become tar, or does it block the tama? So we see clearly from the fact that the Rabbanan say that what are they using the case of the person that it's preventing the tama? So we see clearly that the discussion is whether it could block tama, but the discussion is not whether it has the ability to, after become tamei, to then transfer and then annul it. So the Gemara wants to use this as a rayatar shayla. We wanted to know, according to Rabbi Eliezer, is pshat the neder is chal and then it's mefered in the future, or no, it blocks it from ever taking effect. So we should see a raya that it blocks it from ever taking effect. Ema seifa. So as you turn over to today's daf and Vav and Aleph, says the Gemara, look at the end of the brayso. Amru loy the Rabbi Eliezer. They said to Rabbi Eliezer, Im matbilim kli tamei litaher. Im matbilim kli tamei litaher. You know what's going to happen, said the Chachamim? If you could take a tamei keli and put it in the mikvah and you make it tar, yatbilu keli lichshayi tamei litahar. Would it be possible, according to you, Rabbi Eliezer, that you could toivel a keli so that in the future, when it becomes tamei, it should become tar? That's ridiculous. So it's another argument that the Chacham said to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer, according to your line of reasoning that you could block, or I shouldn't say block, you could get rid of things in the future. So it would come out that just like you could toivel a keli and transfer the tumah to taira, you should as well be able to do what? Be toivel a keli, so that in the future, when it becomes tamei, it will then become tar. Proves the Gemara. 1 second. Shema Mina on the third line. Chaylin. We see his chal. What were those last few words I said? What did the end of this brayso say? Excuse me. What did the brayso say? Lichishayitame litaher. That when it becomes tamei in the future, it will become tar. So what does the Gemara prove? So the Gemara now proves the opposite. The Gemara now proves that what do we see? We see that the way that we're learning is that it's going to become tamei, then it will become tar. So therefore, in our case, what's the status? The neder will be chal, then it will be annulled. Says the Gemara, Ami Rabbanan. So the Rabbanan said, Loi kaimi lahoin b'taimid Rav Elazar. So we have one brayso that the Reisha proves one way, the Sefer proves the other way. So the Gemara responds that in reality, they did not know the reasoning of Rav Eliezer. V'achi kamri lei. And this is what they said to Rav Eliezer. My sfir lecha. Rav Eliezer, what's your svar? Sfir lecha dechaylin ubetelin. If your svar is that it is yes chal and then it is batal, tavi kli tiyoftach. Then the seifa in the case of a kli should be a tiyoftach. That what? Certainly in the case of a keli, you can't toivel a keli so that in the future when it becomes tamei, it should be tar. And he loisfir l'chal dechaylin. And if you don't hold that it's actually chal, but rather what do you hold? You hold that it blocks it. Tevei mikvah tiyoftach. In the case of the mikvah is a tiyoftach. That it should block the tamah, because we see from the case of the person that it indeed, yes, does block the tamah from coming in, even though the mikvah would not. So says the Gemara, The Gemara tries 2 attempts to bring a raya to what Rav Eliezer would hold, whether it will block the neder from being chal, or whether the neder will be chal and then be mefer. The Gemara concludes that indeed this brisa is not a raya either way. So Tashema, the Gemara tries one last attempt. Omar lahem Rav Eliezer, another brisa. Rav Eliezer responds to the Chachamim, Umaz zeraim tameim, a zera, a plant that is tamei. Kivan shezaron bekarka tahirin. What's the halacha if you plant something that is tamei and it takes root and it starts growing? The halacha is it's a new entity, it's a new plant, and that new plant is tar, as nothing that is attached to the ground that is growing is ever tamei because it's still growing. So therefore, say Rav Eliezer, Zeruyin va'imdim like kol shekem. It's not obvious that something that is already planted is going to be tar, even if something tamei touches it. So Rav Eliezer is saying to the Chachamim, so why do you argue on my Chavachaimer? We see that the proof is valid. We see that just like something could change a status, certainly in the future, it could stop it from happening. Shema minas, what do we see from here? Loi chaylin, we see that it blocks, that it does not take effect at all. So the Gemara has a clear raya that according to Rav Eliezer, the mechanics, when one says that in the future, any Nedarim that you're going to make will be mefer, it works. How does it work? It blocks it from ever being chal. Says the Gemara, now let's dive into the Chachamim. The Rabbanon, 3 lines to the bottom, lo darshi kal v'chaymer. But the Rabbanon not hold of his kal v'chaymer. Vatani, we learned in the Brisa, Yachal yimkar adam es bita kishi naira. I would think one could tell his daughter when she's a naira, as a shifcha, as a maidservant. Amri kal v'chaymer. So if you were to think such, tell you kal v'chaymer. Mechura kvar, if a girl is already sold as a child, yoitza, when she becomes a naira, she leaves her state of being a shivcha and she goes free. Einoi mechura, so if she's not sold, einoi din shaloti maker, is it not obvious that she cannot be sold? So this is the Rabbanon. They're talking about a naira, but what do we see? We see that the Rabbanon are saying a kal v'chaymer in svara, with the same svara as Rav Eliezer, the same logic, that what? That something that has the power to change something now certainly could prevent it in the future. This case of naira, what was the kal v'chaymer? If she goes out now, she changes a status now, certainly in the future, she'll not be able to be sold. So ask the Gemara, so why do the Chachamim not agree with Rav Eliezer that if one makes a ned, if one says that all the Nedarim that are made in the future of his wife, he should be able, they should be bottled right now? Why does it not work according to the Chachamim? Seemingly they agree to the mechanics of the kal v'chaymer. Answers the Gemara as we turn over to some Ayin Vavam Beis Teretz that I'm sure many people are anticipating in. It is true, in general, they agree with this svara. V'shayni hacha, but our case is different, as the Chachamim themselves, in reality, already preempted in the Mishnah, already came and said, Damar Kra, Isha yikimenu v'isha yiferenu. Esha balachlal hakem, balachal hafer. Shloila balachlal hakem. Excuse me. Loiba lechlal hafer. So says the Gemara, it's true. Misvara, the Chachamim would indeed say the kal v'chaymer, but they have a pasuk that teaches them otherwise. And we begin a new Mishnah, Ayin Vav Amid Beis. Hafaras Nedarim Kol Hayoim. A very basic din that we've spoken about many times in the Garta Hafaras Nedarim. The halacha is it could be done the entire day. And the Ran over here points out, obviously, which does it mean the entire day? The day, Yom HaShmiya, that you hear of the neder. Yesh b'davar lahakel ulachmer. This is a built-in kula and a built-in chumrah. Ketzad explains the Mishnah. Not just Belili Shabbos, mean a neder on Friday night. Yafer b'leili Shabbos. So when can you be made for this neder? Friday night. O b'yayim haShabbos, Shabbos te'ach techshach. You have a full 24 hours. Nedarim chashecha, but you make a neder a drop before it gets dark. Then made for ashlo teshach. You only have that day because that's the day. In halacha ends when it gets dark. So you're only going to have it until it gets dark to be made for that neder. Excuse me. She'im chashcha v'loy hafer. Why? Because if it became dark and you were not made for the neder, eina yachal lahafer, you're no longer able to be made for the neder. So the fact that you have the entire day to be made for the neder, says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, has a kula and a chumrah, that if it's right before the day begins, you have that night and the next day. If it's once the day begins, towards the end of the day, you have a very short amount of time to be made for that neder. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, says the Gemara, Ein Vavam Beis, beginning of the Gemara. Ha'afares Nedarim kol hayoim, says the Tanakam. Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon Amru, Me'es La'es, nope, 24 hours. So now we start to appreciate what the Mishnah meant by that the entity of Yoim, to say that Afares Nedarim is up to the day, is a Kular Chumrah. Now we see the contrast is what? The contrast is 24 hours of Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon. My time at Tanakama that we say the entity of day. Amar Kra says the Torah B'Yom Shamai, so he has to do the day. For Rabbana, my time that they say 24 hours. Techsev Miyom Al Yom. Tanakama Aksim Miyom Al Yom. In the classical Gemara case of ping pong, says the Gemara. According to Tanakama, what do they do with Yom Al Yom if they say it's not really 24 hours? It's Drich. For what? B'Yom Shamai. Because if we only learned it out from the pasuk of Yoim Shammai, like they quoted, I would have thought B'Yom Mama in B'Leila, you're only allowed to be made for neder a day and not a night. Ksiv Miyom El Yoim, teach you even do it at night. Uleman Damar Miyom El Yoim, according to Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon, Ksiv B'Yom Shammai. What do they do with that pasuk? It's Drich. Ksiv Miyom El Yoim. If only had that pasuk of 24 hours Yom El Yoim. Havamina Mechad B'Shabbat B'Shabbat L'Chad B'Shabbat. You know what I would have thought when it said Miyom El Yom? I would have thought it meant you have a whole week, Sunday to Sunday lefer. Law. Ksiv B'Yom Shammai, says Yom Shammai that no, it only means one day. And the Gemara concludes, Rav Shimon Pazi, Rav Ben Levi, Ein Halacha Ka'oisei Hazog. We do not paskin like that pair, that like whom, like Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon, but rather we paskin like the Tanakama, who is the sheet of our Mishnah, that when you're allowed to be made for the neder, only Yom Shammai, the entity of day in halacha. We'll pick it up from here in the next year. B'siyata Tishmaya.